From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast. I'm Ryan Evans. Transitioning a farm from one generation to the next isn't just about passing down land and equipment, but about balancing experience with innovation, tradition with change, and family relationships with business decisions. Generational differences in farm management can lead to friction, but they also present opportunities for growth when handled with mutual respect and collaboration. Today, I'm glad to be joined again by Anastasia Meyer, an agricultural economist and extension educator with the Center for Agricultural Profitability. She recently wrote an article exploring the challenges and opportunities that arise when younger farmers introduce new ideas while older generations hold on to time-tested practices. You can find that link too in the notes to this podcast and on our center's website at cap.unl.edu. So I'm looking forward to that discussion of how farm families can navigate these transitions smoothly, hopefully while preserving family harmony and ensuring long-term success. So Anastasia, thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
So what are some of the biggest sources of tension between generations that you see in your work with families across Nebraska when it comes to farm management?
Yeah, so when somebody who's younger comes back to the farm, it's that sense of control. You know, there's been research that shows that surprisingly, farmers like to be in control. And so when this new generation comes in, there's that friction of who's doing what. And quite frankly, it's a lack of communication on talking about who's doing what, how to go about this, and it can be summarized into the older generation thinking that the younger generation doesn't respect what has been done in the past. The younger generation often gets categorized as not appreciating what the older generation has done. So it's acknowledging what was already done in the past, acknowledging that, hey, something must have been going right because there's still this farm to come back to, but also showing that respect on both sides of the older generation and the younger generation on how can we improve this operations? Can we bring in new ideas? What's it going to take? What's it going to bring? What can we implement realistically? It's that friction of who's making those management decisions.
Yeah, and I bet, judging from your article, that technology plays a big role in that, especially with the younger generation maybe wanting to implement more new technology and practices while older generations might, as you said, prefer tried and true methods. So are there some strategies for younger generations to introduce that innovation, but without alienating the older family members?
Well, I think the first thing anybody needs to do, whether regardless of what generation you are in, is coming to terms with what is that new technology going to cost. With any new technology, there are fees associated with it. And who's paying for it? Is it that younger generation? Is it that older generation? And what value does this technology actually bring to the farm? Can you reasonably justify it? Is it a need? Is it a want? And like I said earlier, just what value does it bring and who's paying for it? Because if you're a younger generation coming back to an established farm, do you have the capital to implement this new technology? And if not, should you expect that older generation who's been using that tried and true method and it's been working successfully for them to pay for it? That's, I feel like, where a lot of the tension comes in of who's making the decisions and who's paying for them.
Yeah, and we know communication's obviously often a major roadblock in farm transition and just in family farm operations and ranch operations in general. So are there some basic best practices for fostering that open communication where you can have productive conversations about managing the farm and the farm transition?
Yep. So respect goes a long ways. And with respect, you have to be able to talk to one another. So communication, you need to be very open and communicate with each other on what you guys are feeling. If that respect is there, you guys can disagree, but then still come back as a family, still come back as a farm management to make those decisions. So, I recommend that everybody have different types of family meetings regarding to family farms, whether it's the day-to-day, this is what we're doing, the monthly, the yearly, whatever the case might be. You need to communicate what is going on with your business on a day-to-day aspect, but also financially. Can you afford it? Can you not? Where exactly does your farm stand when you are bringing in that new younger generation? And it might lead to some interesting insights. Whereas if you don't talk about it, a lot of assumptions are made, and that never goes great in any business or family business, especially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you discuss shared decision-making and transition planning in the article, what are some key elements that should be included in a formal transition plan to help make that whole process smoother?
Mm-hmm. So I think in any transition plan, you need to know, what are you willing to give up as the older generation? What decisions are you willing to let somebody else make? Now, they might be successful, but sometimes they're not going to be successful. So what is your control level? What are you willing to give up and let somebody else make those decisions? Again, once they make those decisions, you start trusting them. You're going to allow them to start making more and more decisions. It kind of comes down to, when you're bringing in somebody new to the farm, do you want them to make a $10,000 decision, or do you want to wait, not give them any control? Something happens, you pass away, or you can't make any decisions, and now they're making much, much larger decisions. Are they eased into it, or are they thrown into it? So try to transition some of that management over to them when the risks are not so high that they can afford to maybe not make the best decisions, but they're going to learn from it. Because we learn by doing. It's a tried and true. We hear that a lot in 4-H, but it is true. We learn by doing, and we're going to make mistakes sometimes. And hopefully the older generation is there to help us through and pass on some of their knowledge.
Yeah, well said. And then, as hard as it can understandably be for many farm families who, want to handle things internally, you talk a lot in your presentations about the role of third-party advisors, different mediators. Maybe it's a financial planner, maybe even an extension educator, helping families work through disagreements. So can you talk about what they can play and why it might be beneficial for families to look outside of the family unit for a third party?
So third-party advisors are great, especially if they talk to one another. If you're in the middle of a transition plan, have your tax accountant talk to your lawyer. It's going to save you some money in the long run. My advice to anybody going through a transition plan is kind of think of, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how do you get there? And then go and bring in those third-party advisors. If you do that hard thinking and communicate it with the rest of your family, on-farm heirs, off-farm heirs, communicate it with everybody. You're going to save yourself a lot of money with those advisors. Now, if things are getting volatile in your family, just know that there's always resources out there to help you. We have mediators in the state of Nebraska who are willing to help you work through those and hopefully find some sort of an agreement for you. But just know that there is hope. Transitions are hard. I know that. And the best thing is to remember, surprises causes those big family disagreements, and you really need to come back to your core values as a family. Do you want to be a family or not? If you've been to one of my meetings, you'll hear me say a lot that greed and grief do not mix, and they can really turn some ugly heads in families when they are grieving, because people get greedy then. But by openly communicating what your plans are with your family, it can lead to a lot better transition. And remember, transition planning is more than just what happens to my assets when I'm gone. You got to think about your business as one thing, and then your assets, yes, it ties into it. But how are you setting up that business to succeed in the future?
And then last, if you had one piece of advice for maybe a young farmer struggling to get their ideas heard by the older generation, what would that be?
Well, I recommend anybody who is starting into a new career, regardless of age, whether that's farming or in town, anywhere, respect what has been done in the past. You got to respect what was done in the past, and then you can start changing things. If you go in there just changing everything as fast as you can, you're not going to get the stakeholders buy-in, whether that is your family or different community members if you're in town. You have to respect what was done in the past before you start making those changes. Make the changes slowly, and the older generation is going to be a lot more receptive to them.
All right, that's Anastasia Meyer, an extension educator and agricultural economist with the Center for Agricultural Profitability here at UNL. And again, you can read her new article on putting old wisdom and new ideas together and coexisting for the benefit of the family and the farm. That's on our website at cap.unl.edu. Thanks a lot, Anastasia.
Thank you.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.